is Dr. Emilia Urbanek. I work at Swansea University where I lecture at the Department of Geography, and my special interest is soil. When you think about growing anything, you kind of have to consider what sort of soil you will be using for it, because not every soil is good for growing every kind of plants. So the first experiment I would like to show you actually is to check what soil is in your garden. So for that purpose you will need a jar, and it needs a lid. I'm going to put some of my soil from the garden into the biggest jar. Once you have this filled up to about 1/4, you can use a different kind of soil. Maybe if you live like we do in Swansea, maybe you can bring a little bit of sand and put that into another jar. You can also add some compost to the other jar. So we have 3 jars with different kinds of soil. So I will add about maybe half of it to make it half of the jar. What you're going to do now is to shake it, but remember, you have to check the lid is actually closed quite nicely. So you will shake it well, just to get rid of any soil sticking together. You can shake like that. So once you've done that, you can do the same with the other jars, and now you leave the jars. The other method basically is to check when you have the soil and you wet it, you add some water, you can actually see what happens to this soil, and based on that you can determine whether this is sandy soil, clayey, or maybe silty. If you can form a ball from your soil, you can see the little ball. That means it's not a sandy soil, because the sandy soil will not be able to stick together. The main differences are that sand particles are quite big, so they are just about smaller than 2 millimeters in diameter. Then the next fraction is called silt, and the smallest fraction you can't actually see is clay. Sand on its own, or clay or silt, it's not very good for all the life that is actually living in the soil, or all the nutrients that are needed for growing the plants. So one thing that is really needed is the organic matter. So the organic matter, we often buy it in the shops as compost. What is this compost? This compost, when you look at this, is this black or very brown, very light material that is actually made from remainings of different plants. Of course, the little microorganisms, the little bacteria and fungi, they help to decompose it. Let's go back to our experiment with sedimenting. So when you looked very closely, you will see that some of these materials start to sediment. It goes down. After a few hours, I hope more of it will actually go down. And very similarly is in here when we added a compost. But the difference is that most of this compost is actually floating on the surface of the water, which is amazing. When you look at the big jar, you will see that at the bottom of it there is some particles, and then there is some of the muddy water, and then there is some things floating on the surface. And I told you that the sand is heavy. That's why it goes down first. And then the organic matter, so the compost, is very light. So it actually floats on the surface of the water. Okay, I will see you soon.